Good morning. Good morning. All right, brother. All right, definitely. That's what's up. All right. So now that we've dealt with that, let's deal with this real quick. All right. What we're seeing here is we're seeing a conversation that's being taken place between a preacher and an atheist. Okay. Now, some of the things that I do doing in my investigations and examining these conversations, I listen to words. I listen to the emphasis on what is love to be focused upon. From the worldview of the Christian or the believer, the worldview or the viewpoint from his perspective is always trying to get the atheist to see God through the lens of the believer. The atheist is always trying to get the believer to see from his perspective, and his perspective is that there is no God, that there is only logic and reasoning. Now, when examining both sides, one does not believe, the other does. The goal for the believer is to try to get the non-believers to believe. That's the goal. The goal for the non-believer, good morning, the goal for the non-believer is strictly trying to plant the seed of trying to get the believer to look at it from a different perspective. So it's a form of manipulation. It's very cunning. It's kind of how the serpent did Eve. You know, she will not die, but he tried to get her to look from a different perspective. The problem is that the believer's assignment is to win some or win as many as possible. And, you know, that's his mission. The error what the believer makes in all of these different videos that you watch, they're trying to get someone who don't believe in the Bible to accept it. You cannot destroy or break down the walls of philosophy with the atheist, because remember, just because he does not believe, it doesn't mean that he doesn't have faith, because it takes faith not to believe just as much as it takes faith to believe. So he still has a faith perspective. He just uses it from a different angle. All right. The problem with the believer is you're trying to get him to believe in something he does not believe. So wisdom is to destroy his system in which he believes. So you take the Bible off the table. You don't deal with the atheist from the biblical perspective. Though science does prove that God exists, you have to get him to let down his guard. There's a wall up. He's codependent upon logic and reasoning, in which he feels that the Bible does not have any reasoning to it or logic, or it can't be proven. So what do? Because God is in everything, even from the perspective of science. But what you have to do is you have to show the atheist his science can't be trusted. And what happens is, because the believer is constantly trying to get him to accept the Bible, yet he still has his guard up. It's kind of like trying to punch through somebody that has a guard up. Great defenders, it's hard to punch and get a clean hit on them when they have their guard up. But when their guard is down, you have to pull the rug from under him. He believes in science. Use science against him. All right, now let's watch this video. Check this out. And then we'll come back and commentate. But I want y'all to see this. I really believe that if Christ was here today on the earth in flesh, he would use things like YouTube and all these different things to show his disciples of the things that they would have encountered and they would deal with. And then he would talk about them and say, okay, this is how you handle this situation. Kind of the same way when they say, well, we couldn't cast out this devil. And then Christ says, hey, he says, well, the devil, you got to use fasting and prayer. So they had visual aids, but they had a lot more of experience on the job training. Now we have every tool imaginable to prepare us for the field, but yet we aren't prepared and we don't go in the field. We got two things working against us. Now let's watch these conversations. Here we go.
You assume that I have an obligation. If you're even going to give me the time of day, dude, you assume that I need to make sense when I'm talking to you. But in a world where there is no God, why am I obligated to be rational?
You're not obligated. It's just you can't expect me to take that in a way and actually process it. And there are some people like me and these people in this crowd that decide that they're not going to do things, take on moral assumptions, or live certain...
Now listen to this. Listen to everything. When you're a defender of the gospel, it's just like when you're a student of the gospel. As a student of the gospel, every word matters. Okay? Every word matters. Every single word matters. When you're doing word studies, you study the scriptures. Every single word matters. You take one word. Sometimes it will take me 2 hours to do a word study on one verse because every single word in the scriptures matters. It's the same thing when you're defending the gospel. Every single word in the gospel. When you're defending the gospel, the person that is trying to come against the gospel, you are to be on attention. Every word he says is going to incriminate him. You're going to find out that every word that he says, he's going to contradict himself. Okay? Now, this brother here just simply said, he came out and said, it's people like me and people around me. They've made a conscious decision not to live morally. Okay? So now he wants to throw around the word moral. Now, what you do is you take that and you says, okay, cool. Now, when you study the atheist leans and depends on morals. Why? How do we know this? He says he doesn't. But guess what? When his family gets murdered, what he does? He wants to stand up and decide, say, hey, I need justice. Well, wait a minute. Morals, justice, all come from God. Okay? There is no morality. There is no neutrality. It's in the concept. Okay? You cannot one way saying that you don't believe in morals and in the next minute, or you turn around and now you want morals to work for you. So now you prove where morals come from. Because their view is that there is no such thing as God. We're just dust floating in the cosmos. We're stardust bumping into each other. We have no feelings. We have no morals. We have no nothing. But when it comes down to them, a family member getting killed, when it comes down to someone doing something wrong to them, then they want to inject the moral view. You have to take the moral view from them because he's simply saying it now. We're not going to do that. We're not going to do this. We decide to do our own thing. Well, if we're just stardust bumping into the cosmos and we have no spirit, no soul or anything, then basically we're just floating in space, which means we have no feelings. Stardust does not have morals, okay? When the last time you saw a scientist say that he was out in space and a shooting star hit another one and started having feelings, okay? It doesn't work like that, all right? That's pretty much what you cannot allow them to make these claims. A good apologist, one who studies and who listens, who is in tune to the spirit, you pay attention to every single word he says. But this brother, this preacher, he's not doing that. He's still trying to get him to believe the Bible. You cannot come at an atheist that way because he does not believe the Bible. So what you do, he depends on logic and reasoning. So what you do is you get him in a place where he's comfortable, and then you snatch the rug from up under him, showing him that science cannot be trusted. Let's continue to read. All right. I'm sorry, let's continue to watch.
They've intelligently processed it. And telling me that Jesus came and died for me is not something I can intelligently process because I have no evidence of it. And the fact of the matter is, objectively, nobody has any evidence of it. There are private feelings that people retroactively claim is evidence of the existence of God, but I could claim them as the existence of Jesus or of homosexuality as being the supreme way of life. I could claim it as being anything. But
How do you know that?
how do I know what?
How do you know that? How do you come to conclusions about reality?
Well, there's a mathematical process that we call logic that's been studied.
All right. So there's another word, logic. The first word he used was morals. Okay. He used morals. Second one is logic. He says, well, we cannot logically, or we use logic to determine. Okay, cool. So he's throwing around a lot of scientific words. These are ammunition that he is giving you. Okay, that the non-believer, that the atheist is giving you. He's giving you ammunition. So we'll come back and talk about that. All right?
It can be. There's a lot of dispute, but mostly people agree. And empiricism is the study of evidence which is commonly observed. Anything that can be commonly observed, private feelings that can't be transmitted. People, things like God exist. There is no common observation of that. That's the reason why we don't believe.
Okay, so he said there's no common observation of God. So he's looking for a physical being. Okay, so he's looking for logic. All right, that's what he stands on. He stands on logic. All right.
Schizophrenic people when they tell us about their friends.
Your senses and reasoning to determine whether something's true or not, right? Okay.
Following the mathematical process of logic.
Sure. Did you sense that your senses were valid?
Did I sense that they were valid? I experienced them directly. It is observation.
So you sense that your senses were valid. It's viciously circular. It's a logical fallacy.
No, it's not. You have no other choice. No, it's the essence of proof. That's a misinterpretation of how fallacy works.
No.
You have no choice. What would you look like if you didn't believe your senses were valid? How would you go about
No,
it?
I know that I can justify my senses are valid without having to appeal to a logical fallacy to do it. Because just hear me out too long. I know you don't. No, but to determine whether observation is valid or not, you have to use observation, your senses, and your reasoning to determine that your senses and reasoning
Only
are
if
valid.
there exists a
It's a
counter.
vicious circle.
Only if
And just hear me out for just a second. The reason why I'm making that point is that the entire atheistic worldview is built on logical fallacy assumptions that can't be justified.
Now, he does have a point. He says that the entire atheistic community is dealt upon logic. You see what I'm saying? So he understands that part of it. He just hasn't gone deep enough. And he's playing with the atheists. Stop playing around with devils, man. Okay? Don't play with the devil. Don't have no conversation with him. Don't interview him. You know, all these people, they be having these satanic movies. What's your name? What are you coming for? Why are you here? Okay, you know that he's against God. You know that he's against you. Stop playing with him and get to the point. Okay? Stop dancing around. Don't play with the devil, man. Cast him out. Get rid of him. Do what you got to do.
So see, when you begin with God, when you begin with a transcendent personal lawgiver that's created you in his image, has made your senses and your reasoning function.
See, he's still trying to God. The atheist does not believe and deals with God, okay? You don't do that. You're basically, what you're doing is you're playing right into his hands, because all he's going to do is bait you in and keep talking about logic and reason, and you're not proving anything. Okay, you said the Bible, God created him. Okay, cool. He's heard that a million times. Okay, he's heard that a million times. Stop playing with him. Get to the point. Get to the point. Use what he leans and depends on. And that's his science and reasoning to prove that it cannot be trusted. And I'll come back and talk about that in a minute. All right, let's continue to watch.
You made it up.
How is that any more logical?
You made it up.
Tell me
You made it up. How do you validate that?
Okay, now the preacher is playing around. Okay, he's playing around. He's kind of got an arena and a situation he really can't handle. All right, this is vital, very vital and very important. Okay, not only to know the Bible, but one thing about the first century church, the early church, those that Paul and Christ and the disciples taught, they taught them how to defend the scriptures. Not only that, they taught them what other faiths or other philosophies believed in. They were always on point. When something came around, they had already knew about it. The word got around, and what they do, they got together and they started having discussions and talking about it. And then they showed them how to defend against it through the spirit. Okay. That's the problem with us today. We don't study the atheists. We don't study Islam. We don't study any of these other things. We very rarely even study our own Bible. So we got to get back to that place, man, because now he's allowed another devil to come in. He's surrounded by devils. Okay. Now we know that God has our back in these situations, but God also wants us not to be unprepared. Okay. He's dancing around, touring around with the devil. Now he's going to let some more devils move in to basically drown out and cause him to cast doubt in his own statements.
You can't know anything. Let me give you an example.
I can't know anything.
Just let me finish. In a world where there is no God, where we're all basically just molecules banging around. That's right. In a world where there is no God, where molecules banging around, you can't account for immaterial abstract laws in a world where there is no God, because we're all just matter and motion. Now, hold on just a second. Yeah, but can you hand me the number one?
Absolutely not.
No, because it's an immaterial concept, but you're a world you can't account for.
I can, absolutely.
Materialism cannot
it's a
account
material
for.
concept. You're misunderstanding mathematics. One.
Can you give me a bucket of one?
I can give you one umbrella. It's in your hand.
No. I'm not talking about the extension one. I'm talking about the concept. I'm not talking about the numerals.
A single educated mathematician be a blue?
I'm not talking. No, because it's an immaterial abstract concept.
It's an adjective. It's a listed concept.
No, I don't think you understand logic, because you're doing things like mixing the order of numbers in a subtraction problem and giving me the same answer. Right? We know that that's wrong. That's what you're doing linguistically.
I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about the basic preconditions of intelligibility.
But you're telling me I can't make up my senses, and then you're telling me the alternative is to make up God. My senses are here. It's simple observation. It doesn't require a logical process. You're misunderstanding logical process is to conceive of these abstract
ideas. Did you
ideas.
reason for that to come to that logical process that it doesn't require a logical process?
It's not I didn't reason my senses. You didn't reason your senses. I didn't reason my senses. They're here in front of
That's
me.
not what you just said. You said that it doesn't require a logical process to come to the conclusion that I don't need a logical process to come to my senses or understand what my senses
I don't
are.
remember saying it nearly that many times, but I'll say it the way I meant to say it if I didn't. My senses require no logical process to observe. So how can it be? You are putting words in my mouth when you construct the fallacy that is it requires a logical process to establish logic. I establish logic through my senses, which exist right before me. My senses are the only thing I have to experience the world and the things that are happening. And from that implies the entire system of logic. Mathematics derives from my ability to distinguish between the fact that you have two hands and one umbrella. That's because of my senses, and it makes perfect sense to me. Nothing doesn't add up there. But when you start to tell me about God, it doesn't add up. I can't observe one hand and two umbrella and one God. It's never been observed. Nobody in the world.
Understand that. So you say the only way we can know things are through our senses and our reason.
The only way we can know things is through our senses. Yeah, I think I'm with you.
Okay.
I wouldn't put it on my Facebook, but I think it's
Understand. Make sure I understand what you're saying. You're saying logic does not exist.
Yeah, I'm saying that.
Okay. I'm gonna stop right here. Okay, because this is gonna go on and on. Okay, listen, man. The preacher's gotten himself in a bad position. All right. He started playing around with the atheists. He starts talking, trying to get him to accept the concept of God created him. He's trying to accept the concept that accepting the law or commandments of God and all this stuff. Atheist does not accept or believe that off the rip. Okay. So what you do is, this is how you approach this situation. Once he starts talking about logic, boom, ammunition. You prepared, you already know that the atheist wants logic, something that can be tangibly touched. Okay? He wants that. Then he says morals. All right. On one end, he says, okay, we don't need morals, or we don't go by the moral view of the Bible. But yet, he wants to use morals to stand on God when it's time to get justice. All right? That he wants that. All right? So now that we know the two main important things that the atheist perspective runs on, this is how you handle the situation. All right? The atheist approaches. He starts talking about logic. Don't believe in logic, scientifics, mathematics. He's going to throw out all these words that are logical, okay? That he seems to be logical in his worldview. What do? Okay, cool. You tell him straight up, let's take the Bible off the table and let's deal with science. Let's look at it. You believe in science. You believe in that science is logical and science can be trusted. He's going to say yes. Okay? Next. The next thing you say is, if science can be trusted, Mr. Atheist, then why are the conclusions always changing? When you ask him that question, he's going to give you the most dumbest look ever. because now you're dealing from his worldview, and now he has to prove. See, the thing is that the atheist wants the Bible believer to prove that the God of the Bible exists. The atheist doesn't have to prove that science exists, because the believer does not push him to prove that science exists. That's why the scientific equation or numbers that come with any type of investigation of science, or come up to any type of logical reasoning of something to be trusted, it's always 99.9%. Why? Why is it never 100%? Why? Because the conclusion of that situation, of that 99.9%, may change in 3 months. Why? Because the person who's doing the reasoning and doing a logic and using their own logic is using it from their own perspective. It can't be final, because he's using his own perspective and his own reasoning. Okay? We can show within the scriptures that the scriptures don't change. It says, thou shalt not kill. You kill, you get punished. Okay? You says, a man shall not lie with the man the way he lie with the woman, because he shall surely be put to death. That does not change. Okay? It does not change. So once you pull the rug from under him and get him to prove that science can be, or to prove to me why science can be trusted, because the conclusions are always changing. Once he does that, he's not going to be able to do it. He can't do it, because on one perspective, one scientist can say that the blackbird flew from Africa to America. Then 6, 7, 8 years later, here comes another scientist who studied blackbirds and says, oh, would I logically conclude of my own reasoning that it did not come from Africa? It actually came from Alaska first, then went to Africa, then came and went to, decided to leave from Alaska to America. Okay, it's always going to be a contradiction and conclusion within the science community, because they're using their own logic and reasoning. They have no foundation to stand on. But if you play around with them and you get in this conversation and trying to get them to believe the Bible, they're not going to believe it from the beginning. You have to destroy what they depend on, and that's their logic. Once you prove that the logic can't be trusted, or the science can't be trusted, then you start building blocks and say, let me show you how scientifically the Bible, science proves that God exists. Why? Because there's logic, reason, and time. Genesis chapter 1. In the beginning, there's your time right there. Okay? That is your time. All right? You want time? You want logic and reasoning? In the beginning. That's your time frame. Okay? Now you got some time. All right? You want to, let's prove why two men or two women that have a relationship should be, or the God decided they should be put to death, because it does not scientifically produce anything. Even your scientists say that two men cannot create a child, or two women cannot create a child. They cannot procreate together. So scientifically, it does not add up. You have to deal with them on the grounds that they're on. Then you start building and constructing the Bible around them, in which they won't be able to get out of it, because now you've pulled the thing that they depend on right from up under them. Brothers and sisters, I'm going to get off here. I just want to give you a quick little lesson here to show you something that, and I'm going to be doing some other videos on other faiths as well as other things as well, so that we can get back to preparing the people of how to not only be evangelists and evangelize, but also be good apologists, great apologists, and defend the faith, because we're dealing with a world that's getting to the point to where this world, they're either going multi-God or no God at all. Right? The God of the Bible, they're trying to get rid of it. They're trying to get rid of him. All right. So we got to prepare our people, all right, for what's to come. All right, brothers and sisters, continue to do your thing, man. I pray that you cannot eat without eating from the word of God, for man shall not live by bread alone, but every word that proceeded out of the mouth of God. I pray that you cannot, thirst cannot be quenched without drinking from the living waters of Christ. As this world get darker, let our light that is in us shine to impact someone, because this world is going to get dark. And as dark as it gets, the brighter we should be. Until next time, brothers and sisters, grace to you.